Welcome, friends, to the Mindful Heart Podcast. My name is Randi Sachetta, and I'm your host of this space to expand your consciousness, raise your vibrations, and assist you through your spiritual and wellness journey. Remember, this is your journey, but myself and my guests will give you the tools, guides, and encouragement towards being your best self. You can follow the podcast on Instagram at mindful_heart_podcast, as well as Facebook at the Mindful Heart Podcast. And please leave us a review on iTunes so that we can share this healing space with others and spread the word about this amazing journey that we're on. So much love to you today. Let's jump right into this. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another episode. I'm so happy to be here, as I am all the time. You know, some days I'm more energetic than others. Today is after work, so I'm pretty energetic because I just worked all day. And after I do this episode, I'm going to work out and I'm going to have a ton of energy, and I probably won't sleep very well tonight, which is fine by me. I have off tomorrow. Hey. So today's episode, I'm going to chat with Aaron Abke. And before I get into him, I'm not going to forget to mention our sponsors, which I obviously almost forgot to do. The Etsy shop, Whimsy Sparkle Threads. I'm sure you've heard me talk about it a trillion times. She makes nerd culture items, clothing, burp cloths, baby clothes, scarves, dog collars, dog leashes. Really awesome stuff. Star Wars, Disney princesses. She does like all the lines with the military. Anything that your little nerd heart desires, she can make for you. So check that out. Etsy, Whimsy Sparkle Threads. And if you mention the podcast, you get 10% off your first order. Again, you can check out my own podcast on Etsy, or my own podcast. It's already starting. My own Etsy shop, The Mindful Heart, for all of your tie-dye needs. I just put pillows on there, and they came out really well, and I'm really excited, and I'm going to make some for myself because I almost wanted to keep these for myself, but I thought, I made these for others, so let others enjoy the magicalness that is Randi's pillows. So yeah, check out my Etsy shop. And I mean, again, I might send you a free gift if you buy on there, just because I like to do those things. So, also, as you know, I'm in the midst of pre-recording, so I'm sure that you're like, wow, these episodes sound really weird. Sometimes you mention things that already happened 2 weeks ago. Sorry. I don't tell you. The pre-recording fucks me up a lot. But that's the best way to do it. That way I don't have to like cram in episodes and interviews and stuff. I like it to be chilled and relaxed, and I don't have to rush anything. So, all right, we're going to start back again with our guest, Aaron Abke. It's going to be, I can already tell this is going to be a doozy, this episode. So Aaron was born and raised as an evangelical pastor's son, which is already intriguing in itself, in one of the largest churches in the Bay Area in the mid-1990s. So he's a little younger than me, guys. Just saying. Aaron wasn't at all like most pastors' kids, though, who ended up angry and rebellious due to the tremendous pressure placed on them. He was a golden child. He was a prodigy to his father, being groomed to take over the ministry when he became of age. He went to Oral Roberts University, got his degree in theology, and took his first full-time job as a worship pastor in the Bay Area. Which is, I find this fascinating, because I'm sure you're thinking, really? This is who you're interviewing? Oh, it gets better. At 23, he began questioning the basic tenets of his faith, like the concepts of hell, the rapture, inerrancy of scripture. As you can tell, I'm reading this, sorry. Like I said, it's going to be a doozy tonight. I don't know what to tell you. And was met with great hostility by his church, naturally. He quit his job, left the church, moved across country to seek answers, and at 25, he had his spiritual awakening and never looked back. Today, he's back home in the Bay Area, California, and runs his Instagram and YouTube page teaching non-dual spirituality. His mission is to use his platform and high-quality media as a tool to make non-dual spiritual teachings accessible and relatable to modern-day millennials, which this has nothing to do with Aaron, but I just realized that I'm technically a millennial, even though I'm constantly, like, you know how people use the retrograde for all their problems in life? I'm constantly using millennials as all my problems in life. I'm like, oh, that's because they're millennial. No, technically I am. But no, what he's doing is he's trying to bring spirituality, religion, he's trying to bring everything together and help people go through their own spiritual path, wherever that may be, no matter what you believe in. So I'm super excited to dive into him today. I can't wait to talk about his, quote unquote religious past and being a preacher. I guess that's what they call them. No, I'm really super excited to talk to him today. So stay tuned for our interview with Aaron. And if you like today's episode, remember to leave us an iTunes review. If you don't like today's episode, you can leave a review too. I welcome everybody. I welcome everybody. And be prepared for the stumbling. I have a feeling it's coming. So welcome to the show, Aaron.
Well, hey, thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for being on. I'm very honored. So let's dive right into it. As I said when I introduced you, you grew up in evangelical church and you became a pastor.
Yes.
So let's dive into that. Like, what was that like growing up?
Yeah, honestly, my growing up experience was absolutely wonderful. I had two of the most amazing parents you can imagine, the most amazing parents I can imagine. My dad was a pastor of a very large evangelical church in the Bay Area back in the mid-90s. Had about 1,000 people or so, and it was like one of those very spirit-filled evangelical churches where there's, healing revival meetings, and like I saw a lot of pretty amazing stuff growing up. So a lot of stuff I still can't really explain, but there was a lot of the gifts of the Spirit, if you're familiar with that term.
I'm not, but I have a feeling it's kind of like when they cry and like people are overcome, that kind of stuff.
Well, that's what they would call like the presence of God or the Holy Spirit.
Okay.
But like the gifts of the Spirit are like prophecy, speaking in tongues, healing, things like that.
Okay.
Gifts they could say you could operate in. And so a lot of times they would teach that everyone has unique gifts. Like some people are born with a very deep prophetic gifting. Others are born with a gift for healing, or they would call it an anointing for healing. All of which I think is very true to a large extent.
Yes.
I think a lot of the things I grew up learning in the very spirit-filled evangelical world are actually true. They're just sort of packaged the wrong way sometimes, or understood from the wrong perspective, if that makes sense.
Totally, because I agree with you in that sense. Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I grew up, I was an extremely devout Christian kid. I wasn't like your typical pastor's kid who is very rebellious and hates religion and, all that kind of stuff. That's like the typical pastor's kid idea when people hear that. So I had to sort of combat that stereotype growing up, which was sort of annoying. Anytime I introduced myself and, pastor's kid, you must be rebellious, Because usually pastors' kids they have the strictest parents, right? Their parents don't let them do absolutely anything because they're a pastor. It's a reflection on them. They're terrified of what people will think. So the kid is just like handcuffed and gagged and thrown in the closet, basically. Wow. So it's no wonder that they want to be rebels and, disobey everything because they're unhappy. They're being forced to be a miserable person by their parents. So like I totally relate to that idea, but luckily I wasn't one of those kids who was being forced to do nothing and be miserable. My parents, my dad grew up a Nazarene pastor's kid. His parents were Nazarene pastors, which is like one of the strictest Christian denominations, probably.
Even more stricter than like Seventh-day Adventist?
I don't really know much about them, to be honest, but probably not that crazy, but like my dad had to have his hair slicked back. There was only one hairstyle approvable, He couldn't even really interact with girls. Like he couldn't even go to his school's pool to swim during the summer with his friends because they considered that mixed bathing,
Right.
He couldn't go to the movies. That was the devil's box, all this kind of stuff. So my dad grew up in this like intense religious environment. All the pressure was put on him. He had like an ulcer by age 11 because his mom would just be like, "You better be perfect," And so he didn't want to do that with his kids. So he like was the best possible pastor's dad you could have. He gave me a lot of freedom. He never told me I was a reflection on him or I better shape up or this or that. My parents were wonderful. So I didn't have any rebellion in me against religion. I just had like a extremely deep desire to know God. And it was just always sort of natural to me. And even my parents would tell me these stories that I don't remember any of this kind of stuff, but like they would say that I would run in from playing outside all the time and say stuff like, "Hey guys, God just told me that He makes the grass," and like run back outside. So they're like, "Man, this kid sees God in everything," And that's how my dad was too. So I always admired him and wanted to be like him. So anyway, I went to school at Oral Roberts University. Have you heard of that school?
I have not, no.
So Oral Roberts University is like a very famous evangelical Christian university from one of the famous healing televangelist from the 60s named Earl Roberts. And it has this long, rich background in the fundamentalist community and stuff. So I wanted to go to the best Christian school I could. So I got my degree from there. It's like a partial music degree and theology degree. And since I had been playing worship since I was like 13 years old in church, like I started leading worship around 16, like for youth group, and then 18 I was main service every Sunday leading worship. So I wanted to be a worship pastor, and so got my degree for that. Got my first job when I was 23 at a church here in San Jose, full-time worship minister, and I became miserable from that point on.
Wow. You got everything you wanted and you were miserable.
I got everything I wanted and I realized I didn't want any of it.
The human way.
Yeah, sometimes it is. But for me, it was exactly what I needed, because I was confronted with all of the theology and ideology and beliefs about God that I'd always ignored and hidden from, because I knew that they were commonly taught and I sort of had to believe them, but I didn't believe them at all whatsoever. And I was sort of allowed to get away with that growing up because my parents never emphasized that stuff either. My dad never talked about hell or the rapture, the second coming of Christ, or, he definitely believed the Bible was inerrant and was pretty big on that, but it was never like a dogmatic thing. Mm-hmm. So I never really thought about those things. But I went to this church, and this church was much more fundamentalist than the one I grew up in. They didn't believe in gifts of the Spirit or anything like that. They were pretty boring. No one raises their hands during the worship at all, and I was used to like people shouting and screaming and dancing and running and stuff. So it was a totally different environment, and it sort of exposed me to the hypocrisies in my belief system really, really quick, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So from there, I really started being open about questioning things, because I developed such a huge degree of cynicism about the church and my religion, because they were preaching all this bullshit that I didn't agree with. I'll give you a few examples. There were like three things that happened that really were the straw that broke the camel's back for me. And one of the first things was there's a verse in the New Testament where Paul goes on this rant about women and how women should submit to their husbands and they shouldn't speak in church, and it's shameful for them to speak in church. And if they have any questions, they should keep their mouth shut, basically, and ask their husband at home, because it's an embarrassment for a woman to speak in church, et cetera, et cetera. And so I always hated those verses, of course, and couldn't figure out a way to explain them away, because I had to believe the Bible was written by God, not by Paul. Mm-hmm. And so one Sunday morning, there was a lady giving a testimony on stage. It was right after I got hired. And there's a verse that Paul says, a man should always stand behind her wife to be like her covering. Basically, like, she's such a horribly sinful, lustful being that, like, she needs this covering all the time by a holy man.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Just totally disgusting theology. But we were in church, and this woman gets up to give like a tithe and offering testimony, and I see this man who I recognized was probably her husband standing behind her, about 3 feet behind her, slightly to her right, with his arms behind his back, just stoically looking forward. And I was like, oh, that's bizarre. There's like a dude standing on stage. Anyway, I was listening to what this lady has to say, and she talks, and I was like, is this guy like a security guard? I was like super, confused about what was happening. And she talked for like 10 minutes, gave this long testimony, and the guy just stood there stoically. And then when she put the mic down, they walked off together and held hands down the stairs and went and sat together. And I was like, oh my God, I can't believe what I just saw.
Wow.
And that was literally somebody practicing like an ancient ideology from over 2,000 years ago. Right. And they actually believe that it's true and it should apply to today. Like, this is the world that God wants us to live in. And that was nauseating for me to watch. Like, oh yeah, I'm supposed to believe that God thinks this woman up here is so sinful and dirty that she needs her holy husband to stand behind her as her covering. Like, I could not handle the ridiculous view of God I was being presented with on a consistent basis, Mm-hmm. I'm like, this woman's probably way holier than her husband is, if we're actually counting that. You know what I mean? Like, this guy probably watches porn and stuff, and she's up here like, oh, I'm so sinful, my husband needs to stand behind me. So anyways, that was the first strike. And then the second one was, I was in our weekly staff meeting, and there was a youth pastor who was on staff before me who was like one of the most arrogant, like narcissistic characters I'd ever met. and he was he like believed he was the hottest shit on planet Earth. You know, like he was the best speaker ever. He was going to be world famous pastor, and I saw all the different like Mark Driscoll type TV preacher guys he was trying to imitate, and like he was just a difficult person to be around because of that. And he was leading the staff meeting that morning, and he said this statement that I couldn't handle being in the room after he said it, and I almost wanted to like stand up and flip the table and like walk out like something out of a movie or something. Like, I'm so over this, you know? And the statement he said was, guys, right now there are homeless people all around our building out there, because we lived in our church was in downtown San Jose. Mm-hmm. And always get homeless people coming in. He's like, there's homeless people out there right now who don't know Jesus. And those people are going to burn in hell for eternity because you, and he like pointed to everyone like one by one, did not go preach the gospel of Jesus to them. Now, I propose this question to you. Do you want to go to heaven and live there for eternity knowing that someone else's soul and their blood is on your hands because you didn't have the faith to go preach to them? I sure don't. And it was supposed to be this motivational thing. And my jaw was like on the floor. I was like, I can't believe this nauseating, sadistic image of God this guy is trying to sell me, you know? Wow. This is the craziest stuff I've ever heard. And I almost like, I can't even be associated with you people. It felt so gross, you know, because the God I knew, the God I'd always experienced was just this pure love energy, you know? Right. I had never experienced a God who would marginalize someone or who would burn or torture or hate someone or anything of that sort. That was all a very satanic sounding characteristic to me. And so the idea of hell was such a huge turnoff because you're trying to present this idea of God as this sort of like bloodthirsty vampire. You know, he needs a blood sacrifice just to forgive people. And so I have some good news for you, brother. Guess what he did? He put himself inside a human's body to come down to violently butcher himself on the cross so that he could forgive us for creating us and redeem us to himself all over again. It's like this preposterous idea. It doesn't make any sense at all. And so I started questioning it. Like, sorry, I'm not going to play games with you guys anymore, you know? Mm-hmm. I'm not going to pretend like I believe this just abjectly ridiculous stuff. God does not need to violently butcher something in order to forgive sins. That is an ancient, barbaric, tribalistic society idea. That was an idea that the ancient world believed in, right? Right. Every culture back then slaughtered animals and sacrificed to their gods. Every culture in the Iron Age went to war and committed genocide and then said, our God commanded it and we give the glory to this God for the genocide we've committed. It was normal. So it makes perfect sense that Israel followed suit for the world that they lived in, right? Right. Yeah. They also sacrificed animals to their gods and for forgiveness and stuff. And it's like, looking at it now, 2,000 years later, it's hilarious, right? Like, oh yeah, the God who is going to invent the iPhone in 2,000 years, like, is impressed with your slaughtered goat. You know, like, oh yeah, I'm gonna invent nanotechnology in about 2,000 years, but go ahead and like slice that goat's throat open for me. I'll be really happy about it. And you know, this was all stuff that just seemed obvious to me. And it's weird because when you question stuff in the church, it's like you get met with such hostility and anger, like I did. But it doesn't make any sense because you're like, hey, I'm on your guys' team. Like, we're on the same team here, you know? Like, I'm not saying there isn't a God. Like, I still believe in a God. I'm just saying he's not like that. Right. That's all. But religion is basically this gigantic sort of cultural construct of the ego, where it's like a mob mentality or group bias mentality that happens where we get in this room and a bunch of people made up ridiculous shit thousands of years ago, and we just all say we believe it, and so it creates sort of that mob mentality of, yeah, I have to believe it too. Like, everyone else believes it, I gotta be a sheep, I gotta fall in line. And so it's such an intense egoic attachment, these beliefs. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm right, these are the right answers, and I know it with all my heart, and I'll go to heaven when I die to prove it. So when you challenge something, it's like they can't even afford to take one brick out of the wall, right? Because if they take a single brick out of the wall, the entire wall is going to fall down, and they know it. So even though they know that, you know, let's say biblical inerrancy, for example, is a ridiculous idea, they can't afford to question it, if that makes sense. Because if they question it, that means that everything else they believe is also wrong. And that's a terrifying thought to them.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, I've always thought that religion, organized religion, equals ego in a way. Mm-hmm. It's all very, as you just stated, egoic. Yes.
Yes. A lot of beautiful things happen in church and religion, and I'm extremely thankful for my upbringing. I wouldn't change a thing about it. But yeah, religion is essentially organized ego. Mm-hmm. So the third thing that happened was that, like I said, we were in downtown San Jose, and there was homeless people all the time down there. And so there's one homeless guy was sitting on our steps just outside of the church, and he's talking to himself and stuff. And I was like such a passionate person, like I still am, but I was so passionate back then about like my faith and especially about Jesus. I always wanted to be just like Jesus. He was like my inspiration for everything. And so Jesus would heal the sick and he would feed the poor and stuff. So I saw this guy out here and I was like, I'm going to be Jesus to this guy. And I'd brought lunch that day. It was a Hot Pocket, a bag of potato chips and like a water or something. So I was like, I'm going to go heat up my Hot Pocket and my lunch and stuff. And I'm going to go out and give it to this guy. And then I'm going to just tell him that I'm going to pray for him, and I'm going to cast these demons out of him. I'm going to, fix this dude, right? Because that's what Jesus did. I was like, I believe I can do it. I was like super passionate about wanting to emulate Jesus. So I heated up my Hot Pocket, and it took me about 5 minutes. By the time I got out there, my pastor had called the police on this homeless guy, and there was like an ambulance there, and they'd strapped this guy to a stretcher, and they were rolling him down the side of the church because we had to go around the back. There was a big staircase in the front, and I come up and I'm like, what's going on? And the guy's like screaming and kicking, and there's like cops there and some guys strapping him in. And my pastor, his name was Pastor Nanda, he was an Indian guy, and so he was like, oh, well, they're taking this guy out here because he was on our steps and we can't have that, it's not safe and stuff. And I was like, what do you mean it's not safe? It's like a Wednesday, there's no children here or something. Like, this homeless guy's trying to sleep somewhere, and we happen to have this nice big archway with shade he can sleep in. He had a sleeping bag and garbage bags of stuff and all that. And this homeless guy was saying out loud, he was like, fuck you, church motherfuckers. He just kept repeating it. And the cops were like, oh, come on, man, you're in the house of God. Have some respect, would ya? Type thing. And my pastor was like almost like plugging his ears, like he had like moved his head up to the side, like, oh, I can't handle listening to this in the house of God. He said fuck a bunch of times, and he said, fuck you, church. Like, that's so evil. I can't be in this presence. And I was so fueled with rage at that moment. Like, I felt exactly like Jesus must have felt when there's a passage where he goes into the temple in Matthew and the book of Luke. And the temple was like the holy place, like the church, right? The synagogue where they worshiped God and did their sacrifices and stuff. And he sees these religious people and tax collectors and people like that setting up these booths and making money and requiring people to pay money to have their sins forgiven. And that was a common thing happening in that time in history. And Jesus was so angered by that the Bible says he fastened a whip out of cords, and he came in and drove the money changers out of the temple with his whip, and he kicked the tables over, and everyone was sort of shocked, like, what is this guy doing? This is like he's going to get his head cut off for doing this. And he screams at the Pharisees and he says, it is written that my house should be a house of worship, but you have turned it into a den of thieves. And then they said, show us a sign that you have the right to do this kind of act and make this kind of scene here. Like, who are you to say this to us? And he says, destroy this temple, in 3 days I will raise it up. And he was just referring to, like, this is probably an added passage to the Bible later, of course, but they were attributing that to his crucifixion. Okay. So I felt exactly like Jesus in that moment. I wanted to kick all the tables over and be like, you hypocrites, you brood of vipers, all that stuff. Because this is the gospel of Jesus right before us. This homeless guy has come to our church to seek refuge, and we're literally kicking him out.
Because it looks bad.
Because, basically. We have this dignified church, and this homeless guy smells bad and stuff. And I'm like, this is the gospel of Jesus, to feed the sick, feed the poor, all that kind of stuff, love the marginalized, and we have all three in one person right here, and we're kicking him out. I was like, I can't be a part of you guys anymore, There's a passage where Jesus says he's teaching, and he says, Some of you will come to me and say, Lord, may we enter the kingdom of heaven with you? And I will say, get away from me, you who practice evil, because when I was hungry, you did not feed me. When I was thirsty, you did not give me anything to drink. And when I was homeless, you did not take me in. And they're like, Jesus, come on, man. When did we ever see you poor, homeless, or hungry? We totally would have helped you, bro. And Jesus is like, I'm telling you the truth. When you didn't do it to the least of these over here, then you didn't do it to me. And Jesus is actually, Christians take that passage to say, oh, that's because Jesus loves them. But it's actually a step further than that. It's Jesus is them. Because Jesus was a non-dual master, and so he was living from the consciousness of oneness, and he always spoke reflecting this consciousness of oneness. So he's saying, no, literally, if you didn't do it to the homeless person, you didn't do it to me, because I am the homeless person. Everything is Jesus in disguise, Everyone is Jesus in disguise. So I was like, no, he's right, let him say it. Like, I was like super angry, That's like me being super rebellious. I was like a golden boy pastor's kid growing up. My pastor was like, what did you say? And I said, he's right, that's what we are. Let him say it. And he was like, meet me in my office right now. And what he didn't know was like I was about to quit, and so I didn't care what I said, So we marched upstairs to his office, and he was like, what has gotten into you? Why are you talking like this? What's wrong with you? Are you angry? This is unacceptable. And I was like, listen, I have a lot of problems with what you guys do here, how you guys act here, what you guys teach here, and I'm not really willing to like play games with you anymore. I think there's a lot of stupid stuff that goes on here, and that was the stupidest thing I've ever seen. This is the gospel of Jesus, and I ranted. And I was like, how could you turn a homeless person away when Jesus explicitly says in his gospel, when you didn't do it to them, when you turned them away, you turned me away. You just turned Jesus away, man. And you're up on stage on Sunday trying to preach Jesus, and it's boring and no one cares because it's not the real Jesus. You're preaching a false gospel. You're preaching a false person. That Jesus you preach doesn't exist. I came just to die for your sins so that you'll go to heaven when you die. That Jesus never existed. There was never a person like that. That was an invention of religion, which is organized ego. And so Jesus was turned into a control mechanism over the centuries, right?
Yeah.
Constantine and all that. When they made Christianity the official religion of Rome, that's when we had the idea of hell really stamped into the theology, which is, of course, Greek mythology. It's not Christian mythology. So I just went off a rant on him, and I remembered what the youth pastor guy said in that meeting. Like, it was like that same week, I think, where he said, do you want to live with that guilt on your conscience? And the first like really good gotcha question that I ever developed about hell came in that moment. And I have had many more of them. I had many more of them after that. But my question was, he was like, what don't you believe? Do you deny the scriptures? Are you saying you're not a Christian anymore? I was like, no, I'm not saying I'm not a Christian anymore. I'm saying that I don't think you guys are the right kind of Christians. And he was like, well, what are you talking about? What don't you believe? And I said, I don't believe in hell. I don't believe the Bible's an error. I believe in the rapture. And I went on this. And so he started questioning me. We got this heated discussion in his office. He was almost yelling. He was so angry. And he said, so I asked him this question about hell. I said, do you remember what Brad said in the meeting this week? That was the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. I was like, you tell me this. If hell is real, like you say it is, how can anybody in heaven be happy? And so he gave the typical Christian response, which is, well, brother, see, of course none of us want anyone to suffer. It's not like we want them to go to hell, of course. But God will wipe away our memory of them while we are in heaven. We'll be so occupied with the joy of God that we won't think about the suffering people, or something along those lines. And I said, whoa. So you just made this thing a whole lot more dark than it already was by saying that. So you're telling me that, let's say I have a son one day, he doesn't believe in Jesus, dies and goes to hell. You're telling me that God would wipe away every memory of me with my precious son, the most precious being in the universe to me, his first words, his first steps, the first time he said my name, his first baseball game. God is going to wipe away my most precious memories of love for my son so that he can torture him without me knowing it. And he had nothing to say. He was like, you're being rebellious. So I said, yeah, that's what I thought. And I just kind of walked out. I was like, I quit. I'll give you 2 more weeks and I'm out. I actually gave him 3 more months because I felt bad that he couldn't find another worship pastor. So I stayed for 3 months after that. That was a bit awkward. So anyway, that was my first sort of awakening into non-duality, enlightenment. And from there, I moved to Oklahoma, where I went to school because I had a lot of friends there still. And I sort of like left it, stopped going to church. I knew I didn't believe a whole lot of the stuff I had said I believed growing up. So I felt like a Christian, but I kind of wasn't anymore because no Christians will accept me if I don't believe in hell and the Bible and rapture and stuff like that. So I did find a really progressive church at the time, and that was pretty cool, and it helped facilitate my awakening a lot. But I just began exploring, and I wanted answers, because I knew the kind of God I did not believe in, but I really didn't have any idea what God was. And I sort of became a closet atheist for a quick minute there because because I'd been presented with such a phony image of God that I didn't know what an alternative could be. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So I kind of was like, I don't think there is a God. Like, it makes a lot of sense that there might not even be one, right? And so that terrified me because I had always had a close personal relationship with God growing up. I was so committed to my religion that, like, in 7th grade, I left all of my friends that I had grown up with in school because they started to swear, and, like, some of them were smoking weed and stuff. And I was always taught that stuff was, like, majorly evil, right? Mm-hmm. And so I didn't want to be associated with anything that I thought God thought was evil because I loved God so much. And so I stopped hanging out with all of my friends and, like, willingly became a loner just to make sure that I wasn't making God angry by hanging out with people that swear and smoke weed and stuff. So I was a loner for 7th grade and a lot of 8th grade. I had not a single friend at school. My mom would drive to my school, have lunch with me. I was like a very sheltered kind of Christian kid. And so I always loved God with all my heart. And I knew that I had experienced God many times, like tangibly, physically, in ways I can't even possibly describe. But I knew it was real. So I was like, how do I make sense of all that stuff? How do I make sense of all the stuff I saw in my church, all the healings and the miracles I always saw? It's like, I got to make sense of this stuff. So I started reading near-death experiences. I went online and found this website called nderf.org. Highly recommend everybody check it out. It's basically a website created in 1998, I think, by a couple of scientists who were very interested in the study of near-death experiences, and they were trying to, like, pool together as many NDE testimonies as they possibly could from all over the world, and then compare them and say, okay, is there any consistency here? Is everyone having a totally different experience, or are people all saying the same stuff? So they have like a few thousand like medically approved death experiences. Like these people were clinically pronounced dead, not just like, hi, I'm Bob from Missouri and I died. Let me tell you about it, right? So it was legit. It wasn't like, it couldn't have possibly been fake. And I spent weeks I would spend hours and hours every night reading through these NDEs because I wanted to believe there was a God so bad, but my mind doubted it. And I was blown away to see that 90% of the near-death experiences I read, probably well over 1,000 of them, were 90% consistent. They all were saying the same exact thing happened. The same exact things happened in the same order. It was remarkable. And so I said, okay, for sure there is something beyond the physical realm. I don't know exactly what that is or what it looks like, but that's a good starting place, right? So from there I started exploring meditation, astral projection. Are you familiar with that?
Oh, yes.
Okay, all right. So I actually learned about astral projection after I started meditating, and it sounded way too good to be true. And I was like, there's no way that it's possible for me to project my consciousness into alternate realities every night when I sleep and have adventures and stuff. And I don't know about it. Like, if that's possible, I am going to do whatever it takes to do it, because that's epic. So I started practicing it. Actually, the first day I read about it, I was so obsessively interested in it that I actually had a astral projection that night when I tried to do it. And that's, the basic sort of idea of law of attraction even, is that if you intensely desire it, it will be yours. Mm-hmm. And so that's also one of the, as you probably know, one of the main principles of like lucid dreaming or astral projection is that you have to really, really want to, right? Mm-hmm. If it's just like, oh, it might be cool, like it's not going to happen. It's all fueled by your desire. So anyway, I started astral projecting a lot, and once I astral projected, my consciousness began to expand a lot because I started realizing, obviously, tangibly, physically, visually realizing, okay, I'm definitely not my body, because I can be in and experience alternate dimensions, densities, realities, astral planes, whatever, that are not physical. Mm-hmm. So I must be something beyond the physical. And I would have, you have like an energy body, right, when you project. And I was fascinated by that because I had so many crazy experiences with my energy body where, I don't know what your practice is to lucid dream or astral project, but mine was kind of always the same, which is that I played baseball growing up, and so I would imagine myself with my eyes closed, laying down and all that. I would imagine myself holding a baseball, feeling the leather in my fingers, because I could really bring that to light in my mind. I could really make it feel real. I would feel the red leather laces on the ball, and I would trace them with my fingertips. I could feel everything. I'd throw the ball, feel the weight of the ball, catch the ball, hear the pop of the ball in my mitt, just like I was playing baseball again. And so the more real you can make it, the more likely it is that you're going to project. So I would do this while falling asleep, essentially. Sometimes I would do affirmations, but I would just kind of try to make something as real as I could. And then I would wake up in the midst of sleeping, like a sort of half-awake stage. Mm-hmm. And I would hear this extremely high-pitched ringing noise. The kind that you hear in your eardrum sometimes, and you ask people like, wow, can you guys hear that? Everybody's like, no, what are you talking about? You know what I'm saying? Like,
I do,
really,
yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So it'd be that exact noise. And I would focus on the noise, and it would immediately start getting extremely loud. And it would get so loud, it'd be like your face was in a jet engine. And it was really scary the first 2 times I did it, because it felt like my eardrums were going to burst. And I was like, I got to stop, like it's going to burst my eardrums. But I was obsessively reading through forum boards of astral projectors, learning these techniques and how to do this, and they all were saying the same stuff of like, don't worry, it's not your actual eardrums hearing it, it's your pineal gland. So keep focusing on the noise, and it will pop you out of your body. And so I was just brave, and I kept focusing on it, even though I felt like it was going to kill me. It was so loud. And then I would pop into this dead silent state. It would sort of feel like I was floating or something. And the first time it happened, I felt my leg, as I laid on the couch, start to go off to the right, like spread out to the right, almost like I was doing the splits. Mm-hmm. And I thought, oh my gosh, what is my freaking leg doing right now? It's going to fall off the couch, and I'm going to wake up from my projection. Like, because if you move at all, you're going to wake up and ruin everything. And I was like, God, what is it? Come on, leg, stop moving. And then I had this moment of like, what are you talking about, you moron? You get me moving your leg and not know it. And my leg was already in like a full splits position. And it was like, furthermore, you can't do that with your regular body. I was like, oh yeah. So I realized I was out of my body. And so I did the, body roll technique, and to feel like I had rolled off the couch, and then I was up and about, and I could move my hands and arms and legs and walk around, and I could see things. And it was sort of like a dream, very dreamlike state, very hazy and things like that. But nevertheless, I was in some other dimension physically. Mm-hmm. And that was a radical experience. And so I realized that, one of the main things taught about God in Christianity and in every religion is that God is infinite, right? Mm-hmm. Sort of like a main tenet you have to buy in with before you get started is that, okay, God's infinite. He has no limitations. He is the being that is beyond everything. Mm-hmm. But the problem is that most of the time we can't really be honest about what that means, which is that the one infinite creator, being, energy, has everything exists all at once, right? There is every possible reality inside of it. Bizarre realities, weird realities, scary realities, happy, blissful, ecstatic, orgasmic realities, you name it, they're all there. And when you dream at night, you're experiencing a possible reality of the divine, right? That is a dimension that the consciousness is projecting, mm-hmm. because you're projecting it. That's what you are, your consciousness. So from there, I started exploring different teachers. I was open to anything. I wasn't scared anymore to explore, because I'd always been told, oh, don't go out and explore teachers because you'll get deceived and you'll end up believing some demonic idea and you'll go to hell when you die, right? And so I knew that idea was bullshit, and that there's only one truth. Whatever that one truth is, it is unshakable, immovable. It is a rock solid thing that you can't do anything about. It's true whether you believe it or not, right? Mm-hmm. And so if it's not true, it's not going to hold up to scrutiny, right?
Right.
If you try to test gravity and say, I think gravity is a bunch of bullshit, you can throw an object up in the air 1,000 times and you'll get the same result 1,000 times. Because gravity is true. And that's what God is like. God is true. And so I wasn't afraid to question anything anymore. In fact, it was like my duty to question everything, because in my vigilant pursuit of truth, everything must be questioned. Every stone must be unturned. And religion says that, if you question these things, you're a heretic. They call you a heretic. It's a good one. You're a blasphemer. It's another great one. They call you these names. And it's like, I'm sorry, I don't care about your pet names for me. Like, I'm too in love with God. I'm too in love with truth. I'm too inspired. I'm too passionate to stop for you. And I'm not going to worship your sacred cows anymore. I'm not going to bow down to your idols of biblical inerrancy and hell and all these crazy ideas. I'm going to search for truth, even if it means admitting that I was wrong about stuff for a while. I was wrong about those beliefs. That's okay. We're all wrong about stuff all the time.
We are?
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding.
It's pretty crazy. The shocking truth is that you're not always right about everything.
Don't tell anybody.
Yeah, egos don't like to hear that. And so organized ego especially doesn't like it. So yeah, I started reading Eckhart Tolle.
Ah, yes. Abraham
My favorites,
Hicks.
Rupert Spira, listening to spiritual teachers like Muji and Bentino Massaro and Osho, and the list goes on. And I kind of became what I am today. And so today I am the happiest I've ever been. I am the most expansive I've ever been. And every day I expand greater. I accelerate greater. I become more passionate, more inspired, more thankful, more grateful, more in devotion to be of service to the world and to people, more full of love, more full of joy. And I've discovered that kingdom of heaven that Jesus taught and said that was within everybody. The kingdom of heaven is not out there, it's within you. And I really feel like I found that. And I found it through Jesus, ironically, even though I had to deny Christianity to find Jesus. like Gandhi says, he said, I love your Christ, but not your Christians. You are so unlike your Christ.
Oh, that's true.
So that's kind of my story.
My question is, I have a lot of questions, but one of my bigger questions is something I always struggled with. And I hope that you can help listeners kind of come to terms with it, because I know what I believe. I have always struggled with, I always identified as an atheist, even when I was young.
Yeah.
Because of what I was taught, like you were with Christianity, I was taught that there was a man in the sky who condemned you to heaven or hell, and you had to follow his rules. And if you didn't follow his rules, you went to hell. Yep,
he's very temperamental.
Yes, and he saved us, and you have to love him for that, and blah, blah, blah. And so from even very little, I was very against all of that. I used to be a person was, if I can't touch it, if you can't explain it to me, like in a real way where I can see it and touch it, then it doesn't exist.
Yes.
So I'm not that way anymore. But
good.
I don't necessarily know. I mean, I believe in the universe. I believe in source energy.
Yeah.
And I feel like that is Jesus. Mm-hmm. If you know what I'm trying to say. Everybody kind of calls it something different.
Yeah, Jesus is an energy, not a person.
Right.
Jesus is a consciousness. That's why they call it the Christ consciousness, right?
Yes. That's why I wanted you to kind of clarify it a little for people that were listening. Okay. That, you know what I'm trying to say? Because I believe, because everybody calls it something different, but I think we're all talking about, most of us that follow law of attraction and have expanded consciousness, it's all the same thing. You can call it source, God, goddess. It's all energy.
Yeah, the great thing is you can call it whatever you want, because whatever you call it's wrong. So yeah, call it pink elephant if you want. Doesn't matter. The true essence of God is that God is indescribable. God is ineffable, unconceptualizable. God is objectless. There's no objective qualities to God whatsoever. Nothing you can touch, nothing you can taste, nothing you can see, nothing you can put on a scale and measure. Only something you can be, right? So the idea is that in the same way that the sun cannot shine on itself, or a knife cannot cut itself, or a scale cannot weigh itself, because the sun is the shining, right? The knife is the cutting, the scale is the weighing. They're one and the same. And so that's kind of the idea of non-duality, non-dual spirituality. Is that everything is ultimately just one great energy expressing itself, experiencing itself forever and ever for eternity. Because, like we said a minute ago, God is infinite. So by definition of being infinite, that means you cannot be anything that is finite. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So God can project or manifest or whatever you want to call it, finite things, but God itself cannot be finite. And actually, God cannot ultimately truly know anything finite. And the reverse is also true. Something that is finite cannot ultimately know something that is infinite. So that's the paradox. If you imagine like an empty space, a vacuum of empty, endless space for infinity in all directions. Well, if you put any sort of object inside of that infinity, it would displace some of the space. And it would now cause that infinite space to not be infinite, right?
Yes.
That infinite space now has a limitation. Even if it's the size of a grain of sand, it's still not infinite anymore, because there's a space that it is not occupying any longer. And so that's sort of how we have to imagine that God is like. And so if God is the only being that exists, and God wants to experience itself, to know itself, God actually has to experience itself. It wants to, but it also has to. Because that's one of the requirements of being infinite, is that you must express the infinity. If there's infinity with no expression of it, then it's not infinity. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Yes.
So infinity has to express itself. So the universe is here because it has to be here. It cannot not exist, which answers the question of why is there something rather than nothing. There is something because there has to be something. But another paradox is that the something comes out of nothing. And the nothing, when I say the word nothing, what I really mean is no thing. Does that distinction make sense to you?
Yeah, so nothing tangible is what you're saying?
Yes, nothing objective at all. It has to be a completely empty, neutral energy with no objective quality. Because it is just pure divine intelligence itself. It just is intelligence, right? Intelligence with no personality, intelligence with no language attached, just pure intelligence, raw intelligence. And so we experience this intelligence all the time in our bodies and our lives, because ultimately we are that intelligence, right?
Yes.
And so Jesus, everything in the universe is that intelligence. Everything is an expression of that intelligence. And this is easily seen when you go out in nature. Science claims that we know 4% of the universe, which probably isn't even true, right? But, we have 4% nailed down, which kind of is mind-blowing to think about, because we kind of feel like we've figured everything out already,
Yes.
We know why everything's here, how it works, blah, 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 but we really don't. And science also acknowledges that. It doesn't know exactly how things evolve. It just kind of knows that it happens, and this is the way it happens. But some intelligence is moving this force along, and we don't know what it is or how it is. It just is. And so that is the spiritual concept of isness, is that everything simply is here. A tree is a tree. You are a human. And that's just a fact. And that's the way the universe is. It's kind of in your face. Here we are. What are you going to do about it?
Well, I'm a big believer in, and I've said this several times on the podcast, and I say it to everybody in my life 4,000 times a day almost. If you believe it, it's true.
Yep, 100%.
And so that's where it's kind of how I have not come to terms. That's not the word I want to use. It's just what's coming up. That's how I've settled into my spirituality and what I believe in. Like, I believe that if you have a headache and you rub peppermint oil on it, it goes away. I believe if you can't sleep, if you put celestite next to your bed, that crystal helps you sleep. That's what I believe. And people... And I think that that's kind of where, as you said, like organized religion kind of went wrong, is they amplified that with people where, oh, if we make you believe it, then you'll believe it and it'll be true.
Right.
But
Which actually makes you not believe it.
Right. But I do believe that, like you just said, everything is. It just is. Like the tree is.
Yep.
Like I don't have to know why it is, but I believe that it is.
Yep. And it's not striving to be here.
Right.
It's not making any effort whatsoever to be here. It's just here. It's just present. And you are also likewise here and present. And so your life, your expression of what you are, of your individuated experience, should be an effortless one. And the degree to which your experience does not feel effortless is the degree to which your experience has not yet been realized for what it really is. You have not realized what you really are yet. Because when you truly realize what you are, your entire life starts to feel as though absolutely nothing is happening, in the sense that you are not doing anything. Does that make sense?
Yes, actually, it's a nice relief to know that, but yes.
It's a huge relief. That's why Jesus said, come to me and I will give you rest. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light, and you will find rest for your souls. And he's talking about this state of being, of effortlessness, where you're so viscerally present, you just become the source energy itself that is always already present, that is always here. And so even the very words you're saying, you don't feel as though you're doing it. You're not trying to think of what to say. It doesn't take any effort to interact with anyone, to do anything. You're not resisting life at all. You're in total acceptance of everything all the time. Everything is perfectly the way it is, because that's the way it's supposed to be. The universe is perfect. And this sounds like such a paradox to the mind, because, oh, come on, they're suffering. But when you step into true non-dual wisdom and seeing, then you see the absolute immaculate perfection of the universe. And everything is the way it is because it absolutely has to be that way. And that is the most beautiful truth that you can realize.
It really is.
Are you familiar with Rumi?
Of course I am, yes.
Yes. Okay, so you probably know his famous poem where he says, out beyond ideas of right doing and wrong doing, there is a field, and I will meet you there. When a soul lies down in that grass, the world is too pure to talk about. Such a beautiful poem.
It is. And I 100% agree with what you're saying.
Yeah.
I think that it's a very hard pill for most humans to swallow.
Yeah.
And it's come up. It's something that it's not funny. It's very synchronistic that you mention it, because I'm sure, as you're aware, because of the videos and what you talk about, it's come up a lot in 2017, 2018. You know, because people are the whole women suffering, racial suffering, all that stuff.
Yes.
What you said is true, but it's very hard to swallow. It's acceptance, I think, is one of the hardest things for human beings to accept.
Yes.
to just sit in acceptance. It's very hard. Yeah. It's a very hard lesson to learn, but it's a glorious thing to sit in acceptance.
Yes, it is. It is the only glory, actually. You cannot be in glory without acceptance. It's really just a state of full, absolute acceptance of what is. And then you can really step into the glory of God, which the Bible says fills and permeates the entire whole of creation. The whole book of Psalms is full of, Psalms about how your glory is in everything. The whole earth is full of it. Everywhere I go, I can never escape your glory. And so we have to take, if we're being honest, we have to take that at face value and say, okay, well, why would that be true then? And from the perspective of the mind, from duality, from the perspective of the person, you can't possibly expect me to believe that the world is perfect, that life is perfect the way that it is now. There's suffering. You really want me to accept that suffering is perfect? Well, not necessarily, but what I'm telling you is that suffering is necessary. Mm-hmm. Suffering is required, because in order for anything to exist, there must be an opposite. So, for example, if there was only black, if you were just in an infinite black void, floating in the black void, pure consciousness,
there would be nothing.
Never know it as black, right? Exactly.
Yeah.
You would know nothing at all. People would say, does anything exist? And you go, no. But when white is introduced, you go, oh my gosh, black and white. There's two things here now. I see the contrast. So in order to know anything, you must experience its opposite. And so, like I said earlier, God wants to, the universe wants to and needs to and has to experience itself. So how is it going to do that, right? How is it going to, like the sun, how is the sun going to shine on itself, right?
Right.
And the answer is by experiencing the necessary opposite of the thing you want to experience. But it's obvious that none of us want to experience suffering, right?
Oh, no, because humans as a whole in 2018, I feel like I'm talking really bad about humans, but your whole goal in life is to not suffer. Like that's what everybody's goal is in life is to not suffer.
Thank you.
Like,
beautifully said.
I need to take a diet pill because I can't work out because I don't want to be winded and I don't want to put in the effort because that's suffering.
Yep.
I have to max out all my credit cards to have everything that I have because I can't go without because I can't suffer.
Yep, precisely.
Yes.
And
there's such beauty in suffering. And I say that, and I don't want anybody to think that I have suffered in some ways. Everybody suffers differently. I think everybody has trauma. Everybody's trauma is different. Everybody's suffering is different.
Yes. The reason that suffering can be very beautiful is that it is the number one catalyst to awakening.
Yes.
It is the pull of grace. Basically, suffering is... you experiencing suffering is your higher self telling you, come back home, right?
Yes.
Turn around the other way. You've lost yourself out in the world of things. You've lost yourself in the world of duality. And ultimately, duality is a projection out of non-duality, out of the one infinite, all that there is. And that's what you are. And when you don't know that and you think you're a little person with me and my sad story, you have a lot of suffering in line for you, right? Mm-hmm. So suffering reminds you of that, and is the way suffering is the tool that consciousness uses to awaken to itself. Does that make sense?
Oh yes, because I will tell you 100%. I always know I suffer when I need to be called back into my authentic self. Yeah. I just went through it 2 weeks ago. I had a suffer. That's what you want to call it. I had a struggle. I had contrast. I had resistance.
Yes.
Because I was veering off my path and I was not being my true authentic self.
Well, you wouldn't have realized that without suffering.
Right. And I recognize it now. Like I know, and I call it, it's something I bring upon myself because my conscious knows I need it.
Yeah. You're familiar with Buddhism, I imagine?
Yes.
So, the Buddha said, this is the reason you suffer. You suffer because you desire.
Yeah. Well,
that whole idea.
Yes.
So, this is a very misunderstood teaching in the mainstream spiritual community. They think that the Buddha meant to not desire anything in and of itself, like to not want to do anything at all. But that's not what he's talking about. He's talking about attachments, right? He's talking about an egoic desire. Like, I need this for fulfillment. I need this in some way to add worth to myself. He's not talking about if you wish to experience something for the pure joy of it, for the pure passion or love of it. Now, there's nothing wrong with those kind of desires, and I would add to that, those are the only true desires. The only pure desires are ones that are born out of passion and inspiration. And the universe wants to experience passion. Passion is the driving force of the whole universe. I call it love energy in my teachings on law of attraction. The universe is magnetized towards passion like a shark smelling blood in the water. And so when you're passionate about something, that is your higher self telling you this is absolutely possible for you to manifest or experience. And that's what the law of attraction actually is at its most basic form. Is the law of attraction is just you desiring to experience yourself.
Now, I'm going to delve into law of attraction. That was how I got my spiritual awakening. I was introduced to Abraham Hicks.
Yes, I love Abraham Hicks.
I actually went to see her live in Philadelphia because I live near Philadelphia. I went to see her live.
What was that like?
It was very powerful, very interesting. And for somebody that really knew nothing about her, I'd only listened to her on YouTube for like a couple weeks when I went to see her. It was very powerful. She's hard to understand sometimes, I think. Sometimes just the way she says things, I think, can trip people up. Like her books, I found a little hard to read, even though I did read them all.
Yes.
Yeah.
She's almost like too wise for her own good.
Yeah, she is because she's channeling. So she is too wise for her own good. Yeah. So,
touche.
So one of the things I often struggled with, which I've come to terms with a little more, but I want you to talk to about with the listeners, is the idea that sometimes I felt like law of attraction was telling me, you want it, manifest it, you'll get it. Meaning I can sit on my couch and meditate about $500 falling out of the ceiling and it will. And I learned that that's not what she was saying, but in the beginning, that's what I thought. And I've come to terms with there is an amount of work that you have to put into things that you want.
Yes.
So I want you to talk a little bit about that with law of attraction and stuff.
Great question. One of the questions I answer a lot on my Instagram and YouTube. The true essence of manifestation is that manifestation is supposed to be an effortless feeling. It's supposed to feel effortless. Like I touched on earlier, only that which is natural and real is effortless. So like a tiger is not trying to be a tiger, right? It just is a tiger. That's the isness. You are not trying to be Randy. You're not gritting your teeth to be Randy. Right? You just are Randy.
That I am,
I
yes.
can go on and on. And so nothing is supposed to be trying to be what it is. So manifestation or law of attraction is an absolute scientific law of the universe. It is as much a scientific law as quantum mechanics, Newtonian physics, gravity, entropy, thermodynamics, you name it, electromagnetism and law of attraction. They all are exactly the same, have the same validity. It is an absolute law. I don't care if you disagree with it, it's real. But people misunderstand the way that it works or what exactly we mean when we say the law of attraction. In truth, this is like the opening statement I make in my first episode of Law of Attraction on YouTube, is that you are the law of attraction. Because law of attraction, again, is you desiring to experience yourself. So when you desire something, the idea that trips us up is that we think we want or desire the symbol or the object.
Right.
But we actually desire the essence of the symbol.
The feeling.
So, yes, exactly. We desire what the object or symbol gives us. Because, let's say it's a car you want or a person you want to be in a relationship with, you're trying to law of attract it into your life. Well, if the person was an asshole to you, you wouldn't want them anymore.
Yeah.
Right? If the car made you depressed rather than excited, you wouldn't want the car anymore. So what you actually want is love. What you actually want is joy. That's the essence. And so the paradox in the law of attraction is that everything you want is already within you. Everything you desire is already, you are already what you are seeking. Does that make sense?
Oh, yes. I have chills, but yes.
So you just don't know that you're seeking yourself. So the law of attraction is you wanting to experience yourself, but you're doing it through objects. And this is the way that the universe knows itself, is through you and I. And that's one of the most beautiful realizations, is that you are, Randy is one of the ways that God knows itself. How powerful is that?
That's very powerful. Very powerful.
You need to feel that power. You need to feel that power that you are. You are an expression of divine infinite creative energy. You are a co-creator of it. You are a co-creator as it. And so I like to use like tablecloth analogy. One of the teachers I listen to a lot, Bentino Massaro, uses it. Imagine like a tablecloth spread out on a table, and if you just pick it up with your fingertips, about 5 inches, it creates a little hill, right? A little mountain. And that mountain is you, right? This is your life. Randy's here, and she does her Randy thing and lives as Randy. And then when you die, consciousness drops that tablecloth back down, and you're absorbed back into the one infinite source. So you are an individuation of infinity. You are literally our infinity experiencing itself. And so the degree to which you know this is the degree to which you're going to be powerful in law of attraction. So manifestation should be effortless because it's always supposed to be a system of passion, a system that runs off of the fuel of inspiration, excitement, enthusiasm, expansion, right? You can't manifest something you don't actually want, because in the law of attraction, you always get what you actually truly desire. You don't get what you say you desire. You don't get what you think you desire. You get what you actually desire. Because the universe is energy, frequency, and vibration, right? That's the language of the universe. It doesn't speak English. It doesn't speak Spanish. It speaks energy, because that's what it is. And that's what you are. Everything is energy in motion. And so we try to relate to the law of attraction as though, one, it's something outside of us, and two, as though it speaks English or thinks thoughts. The law of attraction has no thoughts. It has no mind. It has no personality like we do. It is just there. It just is. It's the isness. And so you have to speak the language that it speaks in order to communicate with it and ask it for things. But Jesus said, ask and it shall be given to you. Seek and you shall find. Knock and the door will be open to you, because anybody who asks will receive. Anyone who seeks will find, and to anyone who knocks, the door will be opened. That's a pretty radical statement.
Yeah.
And what he means is, if you truly ask the universe according to the language it speaks, you will be given whatever you desire. Whatever you truly desire, you can have. And so when you desire something, you're going to be passionate about it, right?
Yeah.
You can't desire something you're not actually excited about or passionate about. And so some people are passionate about negativity, right?
Yes.
Some people love complaining. They love bitching and moaning about their life and focusing on everything bad that happens. And so in episode 7 of my series, I filmed a little skit in a restaurant where a waitress was taking my order, and I said, imagine that this waitress is like, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm eating at the law of attraction restaurant, and every day of your life, from the moment you're born, the universe starts asking you what you want. And you're ordering the items you want on the menu, not with words, but with energy. So how are you going to do that? Well, any energetic expression you make in the direction of any object is you ordering the object. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So if you look at the menu, like what I do in the skit, is I look at the menu and I go, oh my God, you guys have salmon on your menu? I freaking hate salmon. Do not bring me the salmon. Do you understand me? Please write that down. And then she writes down one order of salmon.
Right, because you put your energy towards it.
Yeah, because it doesn't speak English. It's just looking at what you're focusing on.
Yes. Because
the universe is a neutral entity. It is not. It doesn't distinguish between right and wrong, and that's another principle that religious people can't handle. God is beyond even the idea of right and wrong, right? Because God is beyond everything, and so God is pure, empty, infinite intelligence itself. And so when you are focusing on something negative, the universe isn't going to be like, oh, poo-poo on you for wanting a negative experience, you bad boy. You should only want good ones. I'm not going to give you that. It just goes, oh, cool, he wants to experience a negative thing. And in fact, it's not even saying negative thing, because it doesn't even know negative or positive. It just knows the thing. So if you want suffering, the universe will give it to you. It's a waitress. It's just taking your order, and the law of attraction is always fair. There's never, ever, like Abraham Hicks says, there's never been an injustice committed by the law of attraction.
Right.
So you have to realize that the state your life is in is a reflection of the state that you are in, your consciousness is in. So if you're experiencing negativity or depression, anger, sadness, jealousy, whatever it is, that's because life is reflecting to you as the perfect mirror that it is, your internal state of consciousness, showing you that you have negativity in you, you have darkness in you, that you are entertaining and flirting with and dancing with, and that's causing you to attract more of it. So if you don't want the darkness anymore, stop being interested in the darkness. Stop assigning significance to the negative thing. That is the way that you dissolve it. So if you want something, you just have to be passionate about it. That's sort of the first thing to understand. And when you're passionate, that means you truly desire it.
So I have to interject a question real quick about that, because I have often found that I will ask for something and I receive it, and then I realize that's actually not what I wanted or needed at all.
Yeah.
So how does that occur? I mean, I know why it occurs. It occurs. Sometimes I feel like the universe is almost testing me. That's how I feel. It's a test where the universe is like, I know that's not what you want.
Yeah.
That's what you're asking for, but I'm going to give it to you because you're asking for it.
Could you give me an example, perhaps? Or?
Oh, yes. I'll give you a very womanly example.
Okay, cool.
For a long time, I was trying to manifest like my perfect man. Okay. And it's something I learned at the Abraham Hicks concert or conference, actually. You know, she was like, start writing down exactly what you want. Get really specific.
Right.
Right. So I did. And I was really specific about what I wanted. And then I got that person, literally to the T, got that person. And I found that it was a challenge. It was not what I wanted or needed. We did not mesh very well together.
Yeah.
And it honestly just made me like the whole situation made me stressed out. And I was like, no, like this is not what I want at all. But it is exactly what I asked for.
Yeah. So the idea here is that you can get something that is not in alignment with your true self, which ultimately means you'll realize once you get it that you don't actually want it. Mm-hmm. But this is also part of the evolutionary mechanism of the universe, is that it wants to evolve towards itself. And we see this in humanity, for example. Like if you look at the Bible, is like, this is the reason I love the Bible, is this perfect shining example of this. You read the Old Testament, and as you go farther into the Bible and in the New Testament, you watch the consciousness of humanity evolve and get better over time. Right? Mm-hmm. God is this tribalistic, barbaric, sadistic, megalomaniacal, genocidal monster in the Old Testament. And then he gets a little bit better from there, and he becomes like sort of understanding, and he becomes a little bit merciful. And then you get to the prophets, and they're like really pushing things forward, and they're like, hey guys, God says that he does not delight in sacrifices, but his sacrifice is a broken and contrite spirit. Right, to be in a state of surrender and humbleness and love and all that stuff. That's what God wants from us, not these goats and lambs we're sacrificing. So like those were like super controversial ideas back then. But now they're nothing to us, of course. It's silly to even say it. But then Jesus shows up on the scene, and Jesus is the perfect representation of the divine. This is what God is truly like. And he says, if you have seen me, you have seen God. Because I and God are one and the same thing. And of course, implying that so are you. So you can experience something that's not in alignment with you. And this is actually sort of also a joy and excitement of the universe, is to realize, oh, cool, like this is what feels good and this is what feels bad. Mm-hmm. And that's another basic tenet of law of attraction, is it's the sort of like the guidance system of the law of attraction. If it feels good, then it's true, then it's in resonance, then it's in alignment, and you should follow it. If it feels bad, if it makes you feel negative, if it makes you feel restricted, then it's not true, then it's not in alignment, or it's not in resonance with you, so you should turn away from it. And it's really that simple. And so when you tap into that principle, that's when manifestation starts to feel effortless, because it takes no effort to do what feels good, right? We all know what feels good versus bad. That's not like a difficult thing for us. So you just keep sort of following the breadcrumb trail of your joy, of your passion, of what makes you feel good, what makes you feel like you are accelerating and expanding and evolving. And the more you do this, the more you'll become like a manifestation powerhouse. So in the moments you were asking for this man, you really wanted that man, or you really wanted that person. Otherwise, you wouldn't be asking for it. Mm-hmm. That's true. You'd be repeating affirmations and stuff every day. Once you got it, you realized, oh, I don't actually need it. But what you really realized is that, oh, the thing I wanted isn't in the symbol, right?
Right.
Because the essence of what you wanted when you wrote down your perfect man is still what you wanted, right? You wanted someone who made you feel happy, made you feel loved, made you feel special.
Yes,
all those sort of things. And so that's what you really, truly wanted. And so once you realize that all of those things are already in you, the love, the joy, the happiness is already what you are. Like you are happiness itself. You are love energy itself. Then once you stop needing other things outside of yourself for satisfaction, that's when you become extremely attractive to people, to the universe. You're sort of like, it's like the bat signal to the universe, you know? Mm-hmm. It's like the calling card. It knows, okay, this person is in complete alignment with what is true. And law of attraction is all about being as in alignment as possible with the way the universe actually is. So when you're trying to ask for something out of ego, like I want to be a famous musician, right? But let's say I only want to be a famous musician for my ego reasons, because it makes me, I would be so cool, I would get all these women, I'd be famous and rich, and I could be, people would think I was the shit, right? So that's actually the ego wanting it, not the true self, not true consciousness, because consciousness doesn't want or need anything, it's already perfect. So the the small self, the substitute self, is the one wanting it, and the ego doesn't actually exist. It's not a real entity, right? It's just a sort of programmed, conditioned computer program in your mind. It's just running by itself. It's just responding to stimulus, and it's sort of that evolutionary mechanism we've developed that allows us to continue being humans, right? To continue striving and working and going places and doing things. So, and it's not like a bad thing. It just becomes out of control when you are completely identified with it and you don't know the absolute undeniable truth, which is that you are just the universe itself, not just this person. You are something the universe is doing because you are the universe. And so when you think you're the ego and you ask for something out of ego, you are out of alignment with the way the universe actually is. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So that means you're not being seen by the law of attraction. The law of attraction doesn't notice the thoughts you think because the mind thinks thoughts. Consciousness doesn't think thoughts. It's not noticing what you're saying out loud because it doesn't speak language. It just speaks energy, frequency, vibration, because language is a form of energy, frequency, vibration. Language is sort of just the way that humans have learned how to package energy, frequency, vibration into sounds we make with our mouth, you know? Mm-hmm. We're trying to communicate feelings to people and ideas and concepts and energy and vibrations to people, and we use sounds to do it, and it's effective. But it's not the true essence of the universe. So you can be saying all day long, oh, I want this or that, but if you truly don't want it, it's not going to give it to you.
Right.
Or if you truly want something else, you're not going to attract what you're saying you want if you want something else. You're always getting what you actually desire, whether positive, whether negative, or neutral. The universe doesn't distinguish. It's just a perfect servant.
So what is your take on, because I know there's a lot of hubbub about it now, always, quote unquote, being positive?
Mm-hmm.
Because I know there's a lot of talk about it now.
Yeah.
And while everything that you say, everything you said has resonated so much with me.
Awesome.
And I do believe 100% that you have to feel like you have to be happy right here, right now. Yeah. With everything around you, like, you just have to be happy. You have to be the joy. You have to be the happiness.
Yep.
That being said, I don't always think that translates into always being the happiest, most positive human being ever.
Yeah.
And I'm like, people are always telling me, Randi, you're so happy all the time. And I'm like, I mean, I guess I am, compared to you Debbie Downers who are always depressed and always complaining. You know, but It takes no effort for me to be the way I am every day.
Yes, because it's natural.
Because it's natural.
You're not pretending it.
Right. And so I think that's where a lot of people get tripped up with the positivity. Like, no, I can't have any bad feelings. I have to be positive all the time.
Yep.
Which is not true.
No, it's not true. There are dynamics to the universe, right? And the universe doesn't want to just experience one thing, because that means it's not even experiencing the one thing. It's experiencing nothing, right? Right. So happiness doesn't mean that you're always like beaming with energy and light or something. Or peace doesn't mean that you're always, in a perfect state of bliss or something. Like nothing is making you feel emotions or whatever. It just means that this is your rock solid, rooted, energetic expression that guides all of your experience. So if your parents die, happiness doesn't mean that you're not sad. In fact, that would be denying what is, and that would be meaning you are not being present, right? You're not being present with the emotion that you're feeling, which is that I am absolutely so mortifyingly sad that my mom just died or my dad just died. And I'm going to cry, I'm going to weep, and that is spiritual to do so. Because again, there's beauty in that, isn't there?
Yes.
There's tremendous beauty in that experience because you're really, it's an expression of love, is it not?
Oh, yes.
Grief is an expression of love.
I mean, aren't all emotions really an expression of love? Because if you didn't love, you wouldn't have the emotion.
Precisely. Everything is an expression of love. And that's because love is actually the only energy that exists. Love energy is truly the only energy. And there are different fragmentations of it, different forms of it, such as happiness, bliss, excitement, ecstasy, all these different things, peace. They're all just expressions of love energy. And it's something I talk about in my first episode as well. Fear is simply the polarity of love, right? It's simply the necessary evil, you could say, that the universe had to make, exactly the opposite, in order to experience love. And so I think we would all agree that experiencing fear is worth experiencing love, right? Yes. We wouldn't want to not have fear at the cost of not having love. It's an absolute worthy exchange every time, because love is infinite times more powerful than fear. The Bible even says perfect love casts out fear. God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of love, but of power, and of a sound mind. And so fear is actually just sort of like the distancing away from love energy. It's just what happens when you sort of swim the opposite direction from love. But it doesn't actually exist as a force in and of itself, or an entity in and of itself, the way that love exists as an entity in and of itself. And I'll explain what I mean by that. Love is just the sort of, I guess you could say, love is the fragrance that arises out of a being which is absolutely infinitely perfect in every possible way, right? The state of perfection is felt as what we would call the feeling of love. And so love manifests in many different ways, many different types of feelings, which are all expressions of the one love. Fear, however, is not the same way. Fear only exists in the absence of love, but love can exist with or without the absence of fear, because love is an actual entity. So that's why when we meditate, we are trying to silence the thinking mind, right? Sort of the idea is over time, the mind will get bored of itself and sort of shut up, and we experience this deep, deep, deep state of emptiness, of silence. And what happens when we experience emptiness? What do we feel? Do we feel nothing?
No.
No, we don't feel nothing. That's the paradox, is that we feel what we call love, or bliss, or peace, or joy, or happiness. We only experience positive. Nobody meditates and gets to the point of silence and experiences depression, or anger, or fear. There is nothing there. There is no ideas there. There is no identities to experience ideas there. There is nothing. It is perfect emptiness. Yet at the same time, we feel what we call love. And that's because actually love is not a feeling, it's just all that exists. And so if you were just like floating infinite consciousness in eternity, you would not know a feeling what we call love. You would not know joy, happiness, because that's actually all there is. And we're used to feeling, neutral, negative. We have contrast now, and so we don't realize that love energy is actually just the normal, eternal state of infinity. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. So everything is made out of love energy. Everything is an expression of love energy. Even fear, even anger, pain, suffering, these things we talk about, they are just what happens when you introduce polarity into the equation, so that now all these negative things have to exist in order for us to know what love feels like, what joy feels like, what peace feels like. And again, no matter how much we suffer, we never would say it's not worth love. Like a mother would never get to the point of suffering. A true mother who loves her child would never be tortured enough to say, I wish my son didn't exist. I wish my daughter didn't exist. Wipe them out. It would give its own life for it. Because love always conquers. Love always wins. And so when that is recognized, you understand why passion is so important, right? Because passion is just charged love energy, right? It is like a lightning bolt of love energy through your body for whatever the thing is. Kite surfing, music, dancing, acting, technology, whatever your passion is, that is an expression of love that the divine wants to experience. It is desiring to experience what it's like to skydive, mountain climb, surf, sing, teach, etc. And when you do it, it brings you tremendous joy. And the more you just continue to do what you're passionate about, the more it will manifest itself and become a greater and greater reality in your experience.
So what brings you joy?
What I'm doing right now. Yeah. A lot of things bring me joy. I'm obviously very big into fitness. I'm a personal trainer. I work at Google. And so I've sort of law of attraction to my life to be like more perfect than I imagined it could be. I get to do exactly what I love doing all the time. So
you're a personal trainer at Google?
At Google, yeah.
What? Google has personal trainers?
Oh yeah, dude, Google has everything.
They're like the best company to work for.
Yeah, I mean, here in the Silicon Valley, you got Apple, you have Facebook, you have Google, you name it. It's the who's who. And they're all like, you wouldn't believe the kind of perks they give their employees. It's nuts. So I am one of the perks they give their employees, if that makes sense.
Wow.
And so my clients get a heavy dose of fitness and philosophy. But it's fun. So I get to spend my daytime getting people in shape, which I absolutely love doing, improving people's lives through fitness and health. And then I get to, I also run the CrossFit program at Google. They have a subsidized CrossFit program. Mm-hmm. So I'm like the head coach. I program the workouts. I organize all the coaches, the class times, all that kind of stuff. And so I get to like write CrossFit workouts and coach CrossFit and train people to be healthy, like the two things I love doing. And then I come home and I spend every waking second of my free time dreaming, thinking, expanding, and being passionate about this kind of stuff, spirituality, which is my true passion.
Wow. I really love that.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I'm very grateful, very thankful.
I really love that. What's your favorite workout move?
Oh, geez. Favorite workout move? Well,
yeah, like
I think I would have to say bench press.
A bench press?
I've always been a huge bench press guy. I started in high school. It was the first thing I ever did in the weight room and all I ever wanted to do in the weight room, like most guys. And we had this thing on our wall called the 300 Club. And it was like a placard. It looked like it was a Christian school I went to, so it was like the Old Testament stones or something up on the ceiling, on the wall rather. And it had a list of names of everybody who had benched 300 pounds before they graduated high school. And like I wanted to be on that list worse than anything. And like I was a skinny little kid. I was a super late developer. I was like 110 pounds my freshman year. I graduated high school at 6'1" and 160 pounds.
Wow.
So I was really scrawny. So I was just a very late bloomer, and I benched like 3 times a week, and I damaged my shoulders doing it. I only got my bench up to 280, and I was 20 pounds shy, and I was like, it was like devastating at the time. It's like my whole high school career was about this. But so yeah, I think probably bench press is what I'm best at and my favorite exercise.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah. Little side note.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I stalked your Instagram, obviously. And I was like, oh, he's really fit and really into fitness.
It's another thing that people are kind of shocked about usually.
Well, it is because I think that, again, I'm generalizing, but, you know, in a couple weeks, I'm interviewing a spiritual guru, if you may, because that's something I would call you. Yeah. How I would classify you guys. And she's really big into fashion and makeup. And I think sometimes in the spiritual community, being into fitness or fashion or that kind of stuff, like being into material things, there's a stigma on that. And I've always been drawn to people that it doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter. I mean, I'm very into makeup and fashion, and I can wear whatever the fuck I want and do whatever the fuck I want. If it makes me happy, that's all that matters.
Doesn't make me less of a spiritual person.
Right. So I love that you are into fitness. I've been on a very big fitness journey lately, so I really love that. So
that's great. It's one of the things that I love using against people, so that I like it that people can't really nail me down and categorize, you know? Because like people look at me and I was a signed fitness model for many years and a bodybuilder, and I'm a personal trainer, and people look at me and they go, "You're enlightened?" Like, you of all people should not be enlightened. Like, you should have the biggest ego of anybody, and they expect me to. And then they read my captions and they're like, "What is going on here? Is this guy for real? Is he bullshitting us?"
And it's true, because I feel in the opposite sense that, I mean, I've always been like a curvier girl and that kind of stuff. And I feel like people think the same to me. Like, oh, like you're a hippie, you're spiritual, like you do yoga, like you meditate. I mean, I don't know anybody that looks like you that meditates. I'm like, well, you do now. So welcome.
Yeah, and that's the thing we were just talking about earlier,
Exactly.
is that God does not have any form of any kind. So God is everything and can be anything. That's the whole fun of being God, is you can be whatever you want.
Exactly.
And you don't have to be locked down to something. And when people can't lock you down, it's actually a very good spiritual teaching. It's a very good spiritual practice for them, because it's starting to shatter a preconceived idea they had, right?
Right.
God must be like this. Spirituality must look like this. Sorry, it can look like anything.
Yes.
And I like having no real fixed identity. I can step into different roles if I want. I can be the epic fitness guy if I want. I can do fitness modeling if I want. I can be the spiritual guru if I want. I can be the life of the party or the silent guy. Like, I can step into any role I choose to step into that feels in resonance for me, and that's fun.
It is. And I actually would love to talk to you for like 6 more hours. So like an hour and a half now.
We're maxing out.
I know, because studies show that people don't listen past a certain time, blah, blah, blah.
It's true.
So I'm sure you know that with all of the stuff that you do.
You'll have to have me back on.
I'm going to. Don't worry. I was going to go there when we're done. But I do want to broach a subject I didn't yet, really kind of briefly.
Sure.
So how have your parents been through your awakening?
Great question. Yeah, I was very nervous about it because, you know how dearly held all these beliefs are and stuff. But my parents are just the most wonderful people, man. And they love me more than anything. And they know my heart more than anybody knows it. And they know that I'm just like passion in a body, you know. So if Aaron is passionate about something and things like that, it can't be all too bad, right? Because we know his heart. He wants God. He wants truth worse than anything. So I think they've seen that. They seem very, I mean, they've always been very progressive in their thinking, but they seem very accepting of it. I think my dad has a little more issues with some things than my mom does, which is like theology, but they don't hold them super tightly, because the one thing they hold the tightest is love for God, and that's the ultimate law, is love for them. And that's something I grew up with, and especially my dad saw his true, authentic passion for God, his love for God, and that was always his highest rule, his highest law. So while they might disagree with some things I teach or say, they love me. They love that I'm passionate about God and spirituality, and I think for the most part they actually are totally behind what I say and what I teach. So that's cool.
That's really awesome, actually.
I'm lucky in that sense, we should say.
Yeah, I mean, from what you said in the beginning, I felt like they probably would be behind you because they sounded really cool. So it's great that they're supportive of you.
Yeah, I know that they were probably very scared in the beginning when I started posting stuff online about like hell isn't real and I don't believe the Bible's inerrant and stuff like that. But it's been great over time, and most pastors' kids can't say that. Their parents would literally ostracize them, and I know people whose parents have. And I had many friends and family members as well that sort of did ostracize me and still do ostracize me because I don't believe some things they believe, which is really sad and really ego. But that's the way that it is, and you can't change people, and you got to love them anyway.
Well, that's very true. I think that's one of the most profound things that I've heard and that you can say is that you can't change people. You just have to love them and accept them for who they are. Mm-hmm. And then if they choose to change, great.
Yeah. And you don't even have to like them.
But you can accept them and you can love them.
Yes. Yeah, you have to love them, but you don't have to like them.
Yes, I agree. So, Aaron, tell the listeners about your YouTube channel, and you have the Law of Attraction series, and let them know where they can find you.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, it's pretty simple because both my Instagram and my YouTube are just my name, which is Aaron Abke, so at AARON, and then my last name is just 4 letters, ABKE. So youtube.com/Aaron Abke, same thing on Instagram. Yeah, I just finished last weekend actually an 8-episode series that took me just over 2 months to film and put together. Sort of taking people step by step through what the law of attraction is, how it works, and then taking them through some techniques and principles and methods to start practicing it, applying it, and creating a better life, becoming happier. So that's on my YouTube channel, as well as a lot of other just kind of generic teaching videos. And I really just started it a couple months ago.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, but it's been taken off. It's been really fun. I think I have just under 500 subscribers already in a couple of months. So that's been a huge sign that people are resonating with it. And that's been cool. Yes,
definitely. I wouldn't have thought that you started a couple months ago. Wow.
Yeah, just brand new to it, really.
Yes.
But super passionate about it, having a blast with it. And I have so many different ideas and series I'm going to be doing in the future. So yeah, if you're into it, hit subscribe and start enjoying the content, man, because I got a lot of it coming your way.
Awesome. Like I said, I'm going to have you back on because I have so many other things I'm going to talk about.
Yeah, we got to do this again for sure.
I know. And I love this, like this co-creation. That's like, I just love to talk about this. And
it's so fun, isn't it?
It really is. I mean, I'm like juiced up.
Me too, man.
And here it's 9:30 at night. Like,
oh, geez. Let's just hit end and then start a new episode.
I'm telling you, it's like, I'm like, and my body is like, you should go take care of yourself and then go to bed because you have to be up early.
Well, tomorrow when you wake up, follow that inspiration and take action on it.
Oh, I will. I mean, I have like a lot of stuff to do tomorrow, but
after you do the stuff you have to do, then do the stuff you want to do.
But it's good stuff. It is stuff I want to do. Like I have a lot of side hustles because all my side hustles are going to become my main hustles.
Nice.
You know what I mean? So
yeah,
I love my side hustles. Yeah, like I love them.
That's great.
But you have to do them.
You do. But that's exciting. That's fun.
It is. So thank you so much for being on, Aaron.
Thank you so much for having me, Randy.
Yes. And thank you all for listening. So much love to you.
Yeah, thank you guys so much.